will happen is that the people that have the right attitude, for example, nothing is too much trouble. It doesn't matter. You've thrown 100 things at them to come back to you with. The 100th thing is still as enthusiastic about getting it to you as the first thing. Then if they have this attitude of nothing is too much trouble, then guess what? They're going to be like that for your clients as well. All right. So you want someone that's going to have the right attitude, that nothing is too much trouble when it comes to your clients. But if you have the other way, where you've asked them a few things and they grumble about getting it to you, then they're going to be like that with your clients, and you don't want that kind of a person. So attitude is everything. Put them through through the toughest tasks that you can put them through. Put them through as many things that you could get them to do, and if they still come out of that with the right attitude, then you've got to you're somewhat more likely to get the right person.
Yeah, I agree.
So let's just split this up, guys, between grinding roles and mining roles. So we've covered off on attitude, and then just to get a little bit more specific, Jamie, on some of the tools that you use, because we've got a few questions on what sort of tools and platforms to use. On the skills side of things and testing productivity, what would you suggest as the tips there?
Yeah, the tips there, I think for accountants and bookkeepers, we've been using Account Test. The guys they're obviously based out in New Zealand, but they have an array of accounting, bookkeeping tests, I think around 5 countries now. So those tests, cover all the accounting and bookkeeping questions right up to, the level of being a chartered accountant. And not only that, they're timed as well. So in terms of those tests, they've been quite good. The sort of tip there is to get context. I often say to all the firm owners I'm dealing with is you can do the tests yourself and you can do them for free. Obviously, if you do the test themselves, when you get the candidates' results, you'll have an understanding of where they're at. And even better than that, if you get down to 2 or 3 candidates, then test 2 or 3 of them and put them in a spreadsheet side by side. There's like a spreadsheet, you can do that in the Vault. Again, that gives you context, because context is everything. It's just someone in Ireland, it's very hard to see sort of where they're at. So Account Test is one. For administration staff that I've even used at Sky, there's Test Dome. You can have a look at that. It's called testdome.com. There's also Guerrilla Testing, and some of those tests are really good for administrative and reception. So around grammar, service levels, reception sort of thing. So there's some other tips. So you definitely want to make, like Ed said, put them through the test. And, I always ask people to do the test when I've chosen the candidates. I always do that face to face. And so if I get a good candidate, I can see that their attitude's good. Once they've jumped through a lot of the hoops, I'll ask them to do the test face to face. And then they know that you're committed. And you'll see that whether they're committed or not as well. So there's some things around productivity, Brent, because you must test people. Yeah.
Just on that as well, for everyone who was listening to the Account Test, they are actually a Wize expertise partner. So if you go into your online vault on Wize Mentoring, go to Wize Expertise Partners, there's a special offer from the Account Test guys there for Wize members. Let's move to the Minder then. How do they differ in terms of...
Brenton, before we go to the Minder, can I just add to what Jamie said on the grinder? The kind of people that we want as a grinder in our industry is different to the accountants that you want in a commercial firm or a public service. Right? The people that we're looking for as a grinder has to have speed, right? So you've got those 3 things. You've got your attitude, and we talked about that with grinder. Brenton, could you just go back to the grinder? Yeah, that's it. Oh no, that's it. So you need the attitude. So we talked about that. Put them through hell with what you need back from them, and then you've got to then look at their skills, because they often tell you they can do this and they can do that and they can do this and they can do that. But what I do is I get them to do some jobs. I get them to do some jobs so I can see whether they can actually do the job or not. As I said, they all say they can do the job, but you know, but their definition of being able to do it and your definition of being able to do it could be completely different. So I get 3 tasks and I get them to do 3 tasks. And then the last thing is, in our industry, accountants have to be quick. So if they're taking, you know, an hour to do something when somebody else takes 10 minutes to do it, it's costing you 3 times as much for that person. So then we measure how fast that they've taken to do those tasks that you've asked them to do. Now, as a grinder, you know, there's nowhere to hide. Attitude, they've shown you they can do it by actually doing 3 tasks, and you've measured how fast that they've got it done, and that is the best way, in my view, after many years of managing and hiring people. When it comes to the grinder, to the person that does the work, you want someone that can do it very quickly. And as I said to you in the beginning, you know, some accountants are not suited to our industry. So not all accountants are suited to our industry. And often they should go off and work in a commercial firm, and where speed isn't an issue. But for us, speed is everything. I just wanted to make sure that I emphasize that when you're looking and you're recruiting a grinder.
Thanks, Ed. Just for everyone listening in, this is being recorded, so if you do have to go on the hour, you'll be able to access the end of the recording. We're probably going to be at this rate, probably 5 or 10 minutes over if you're happy to stick around, and if you have any questions, we can stay around as you need to as well. But let's move on to testing for a minder, Jamie. So again, we've spoken about the attitude piece, but then it comes down to looking really at the interpersonal skills and communication skills. So can you touch on that a little bit for us?
Yeah, and this is really important, particularly if you've got, you know, with the minder role, you know, a senior production manager and even the client managers, and you've got some really good dot points on the screen there. And often when I'm doing the recruiting, you know, I'll ask, have they had direct reports before? Have they managed people? And then delve into sort of, if you can, and sometimes it's difficult to get the information, and often you can get this information from reference checks. So when they organise their own reference checks, you can ask the referee, how do they manage people? You know, did they have much turnover while they were in that job with the people that they were supervising? Because yeah, it's sort of a different level to a grinder, obviously, because you're starting to manage people and you're trying to work out how well they can manage people, and particularly, you know, some people you can give them staff members or team members, but they don't engage with them, and they end up with what Ed calls a paid audience, you know, and they can't delegate. You know, it's so critical that someone in this mindset, in this role as a minder, and even a client manager, will drive with the leadership to do the daily huddle. You know, I've been and seen people where they're sitting there and doing nothing, particularly with offshore staff, you know, out of sight, out of mind. And it's a global world now. So even when you've got staff in the office, you know, I've seen people where they really need help and they're just not getting it because the person who's in charge of them doesn't have a focus around, well, I've got a team, you know, I've got a team of people to deliver the service. And then again, it's so easy too in this role to have people that are control freaks, you know, and they just won't delegate. They'll say to themselves, oh, it's quicker if I just do it myself, you know. And so they're the sort of questions that you need to drill down into, even when you're looking at their references, because sometimes the testing around, you know, actual tasks and the technical side won't reveal this. So you've got some of that psychometric testing can help with this. I'm not a massive fan of that, but some of it can show, you know, whether we're inclined to be more engaged with team members and working in a team than just by themselves. So, yeah.
And just on that point, the personality testing, because we always get people asking about which personality tests to use. And I remember early on in Chan and Naylor, you guys had almost built out your own personality assessment. Where do you stand on that today in terms of personality testing candidates?
Yeah, I think the personality testing works a bit better for the minder finder rather than the grinder.
Mm.
The grinder for me is just those three things. If they pass those three things, then they can have two heads. It doesn't really matter because they're all production orientated. But when it comes to the minder, it's more the personality and their people skills and their ability to communicate. And I just have three things. Obviously, it starts off with attitude. Then I just ask a whole lot of technical questions, so they have to have the ability to answer, all the technical questions. Like explain to me, how do you explain to a client when you've showed $100,000 profit and you've said to them that their tax bill is 30 grand, but they've got no money in the bank. You have to be able to explain to the client where their money is. And that has a different level of command of English or command of communication compared to the grinder, where they've just said, can you send me in your missing bank statement? So it's a different level of communication. So I asked them a whole lot of questions about, explain Division 7A and explain how you'd explain to a client that they've got a debit loan account, but in layman's terms. So speed isn't as essential in the minder finder role. It's more about, a people person communicating, knowing when to talk to a green person compared to a blue person. A blue person's more focused on numbers. A green person's more people orientated. So you can always tell when you're talking to a blue or a green person, when you ask them, how's your day? The blue person says, yes, it was good. And he wants to get stuck into it. The green person will say, yeah, it was great. Or, I picked my kids up, dropped them off. The weather's great. They like to talk about, things to do with people. And so that means there's a different way to communicate to a green as to opposed to a blue person. With a blue person, you focus on the numbers, but with a green person, you just say, oh, your profit is this and your tax is this, and then you go off and you talk about their kids and how was young Johnny's school day today. So you need to be able to connect that at that level, and the person needs to have emotional intelligence to be aware of those kind of things, whereas a grinder just is focused on getting the work done very, very quickly. So so the personality testing works better with a minder finder than it does with a grinder. But I'm like Jamie, I'm a little bit a bit skeptical of them. I've only had 50-50 sort of success, but if you follow our system of recruiting, and there's nowhere to hide, it just cuts to the chase, and saves a lot of time as well, because a lot of this psychological testing, they go around and around and around and around in circles. And I just want from a minder these three things. They have to be able to answer the questions. They have to be able to respond to emails and phone calls, and they have to be people orientated, and have to be technically knowledgeable, but not necessarily know how to do the work. And only 80%, because the last 20%, I'm going to fill that role, or the owner's going to fill that role, and that's it. That's all I look for.
Perfect. Well, guys, I want to just set the scene for our next clinic, which is in 2 weeks' time, which will be when we accept or have a candidate accept a role, and we're going to be doing the onboarding process over the first sort of 90 days with that new employee. So that conversation will be parked for the next clinic in a couple of weeks' time. But just to wrap up on the content here, and we'll get to any questions that anyone has, or if you need to leave, you can leave. Once we've gone through this testing, what's the very next thing you do to make sure you seal the deal? Is it, coming back to acting fast? Is there any tips or tricks around this area of just making sure you secure that candidate?
Yeah, I'd just say the biggest thing is be responsive, Brent, and make them an offer. But if you get sidetracked with the next tax return or something, you'll just lose the person.
Yeah.
I couldn't stress finding the right people and building out your team, and then getting them inducted and bedded in, is one of the most critical things you'll ever do to build your firm. It's all about the people. Years ago, I think I've said it before, I used to be client fanatical, but these days I'm team fanatical.
Yeah.
So that's the mindset, because you want to go to work not to do the tax return or do the bookkeeping. Eventually you want to go to work to build a business that does the bookkeeping and that does the tax return, and it's the people that'll help you do it.
And just a quick question from Adam on that process, from say first interview to job offer, how long do you normally allow for in terms of time frame there on average?
1 week.
Okay. 1 week.
Yep. 1 week.
Okay, that's nice and easy. Ed, before we get to any questions, that period we were talking about between interviews and offer, anything else to add there to seal the deal?
Well, for me, is if you find the right candidate straight away. If I can get it all done and the testing done, everything done within a day, I'd offer it to them if they were the right person. So I wouldn't waste too much time, but it generally will take about a week, because you're going to have quite a few candidates come through. You've got to get them through all of the testing, the questions, and you've got to try and decide who it is. And so on average, it is about a week. If you're going more than a week, then you're going to lose the candidate. But there are times when it's gone much quicker, because it was obvious who the right person was, and I just made the offer without having to waste any more time. So it's all different, Brenton. Yeah.
Okay. Again, one last thing before we get to the questions. For anyone who's looking for more information